Very good.
Okay. Well, welcome to Coffee with Doctors. Today we're in Garden Grove. This is Neurologic Rehab and Wellness. I'm Doc Brock Neurochimer, and this is Dr. Michael Levi.
Hello, everyone.
So, tell him what degree you carry.
Oh, I have a PhD in health and nutrition education. I studied in the School of Public Health over at UCLA, the group called the California Academy of Health. And our whole purpose is that we wanted to be able to start teaching doctors the importance of alternative medicine and holistic health, which was a very new thing back in those days. So, things like free radicals or things such as, well, they didn't even have the term microbiome. We simply said friendly bacteria flora.
Yeah,
They thought that was
friendly.
yes, they thought that was quite accurate.
Nice.
So as an orthomolecular nutritionist, that was a term that was coined by the late Linus Pauling of their Linus Pauling Institute up north in Palo Alto. It was a matter of being able to get people to understand that what happens in the body is usually based upon a deficiency. So when you have a problem, it's a missing link because everything in the body has chain reactions. Just like, for example, Dr. Brock uses the whole concept of saying this nerve goes into that one, that affects that, and it fires this muscle. And, it gets a little confusing. But after you have a few sessions with him, you start hearing some of the terminology, which is not too abstract, so that you start realizing everything in life has a chain link reaction. So it's inescapable. So that's essentially what orthomolecular is. It means accurate or exact or correct molecule or correct nutrition. So we plug in what is missing based upon the chemistry of your body, what it's telling us through blood tests and signs and symptoms. So there's a way of actually being able to find out what do we need to put into the body to help to move the curve and to get that interaction between all the mechanisms of the tissues, allow the DNA, its intelligence, to be able to start making correction.
That makes sense. So we sum it up like that's functional medicine.
Yes, it is. That later became functional medicine. Yeah,
and I do functional neurology.
mm-hmm.
So it's outside of it's the natural realms on prevention.
Exactly.
And that's we have to label it as function. Later on, all these concepts develop to functionality.
Right. That's right.
Versus pathology or extreme disease.
It's like there's a colleague of mine. He used to be the department head of the area in Colombia related to experimental cardiology. He's a Greek guy. I can't pronounce his last name, so I just call him Dr. George.
Yeah, aren't they all?
All right. If no one knows the way for Greece, you know what I'm
saying. Greek doctors. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So he refers to it like with functionality. He says, Dr. Levi, it's not homeostasis, it's dynamic homeostasis.
See? Yeah. Function. I love that. So true.
Yes.
Well, today's topic, we're going over food allergies versus sensitivities. Now, most cases, I realize that we're talking about things that interrupts us when we eat them. Mm-hmm. Oh, we're allergic. That we always say allergic.
Yeah.
Right. But not everyone has allergies. Mm-hmm. Not everyone has autoimmune system reactions to food that we eat. Mm-hmm. But that falls more under allergies. The sensitivities I really carry a lot more in my office because it's not my expertise as yours. Mm-hmm. But sensitivities kind of under the wheelhouse that I look at often here. But how do you know you have sensitivities to food? Right, so you can have symptoms of like bad breath. Mm-hmm. So the breath, I don't think I'll be able to write this fast, so I'll just say them, but bad breath, abdominal pain, so it hurts. We eat some food and it like hurts. Everyone has this thing because everybody has sensitivities. Not everyone has autoimmune allergies. And those are two different things. Mm-hmm. But then you can also be dizzy. You can have vertigo from what you're eating. You're sensitive to. You can be bloated, which a lot of it, eat food. We always can. You see those larger stomachs, and we're just carrying so much inflammation and bloating. That all comes out of sensitivities. But there's a lot. So the one way, like if I'm eating like a carrot, like some kind of neutral food, I'm just eating a carrot. But when I'm eating a carrot, we're in a meal. We're all sitting down. We're talking to family, whoever we're eating. We're eating our food and we're clearing our throat. Mm-hmm. So, and then you have to eat some more. Well, why are you clearing the throat? It's an instant reaction to a food that you're eating that's causing you can't process well. So you're sensitive to it. And on the tongue, there's a recurrent nerve for memory of foods that we cannot process well. So we immediately, when we're eating this carrot, let's say it's that one, you're eating, it touches the tongue, there's a recurrent nerve that tells your brain to start building mucus because you're defending against something you can't eat well. So it builds up in your throat and your sinuses. It also builds up in the large intestine, so your mucosa. So you're building all this mucus. So when people are eating and clearing their throat, they're automatically sensitive to that same food touching the tongue. That's how you know right away.
Oh, yeah.
Like I'm clearing my throat, I'm eating, I got, oh, what is this? Okay. It's not from before. It's most likely what you're doing right at that time.
That's right.
So that's another way to tell is you have the mucus build up as you're eating the food. So the problem with sensitivities is the master control. We have a recurrent nerve of memory of food on our tongue, but we also have the master control ileocecal valve. So this is the brain of the gut. So that valve is between the small intestine, which runs 18 feet on average, and then it inserts into the large intestine. But the large intestine descends and goes into sigmoid and rectum, but this, and then your appendix is hanging a little more south of that. But there's a valve that's a sphincter type, just like your iris in your eye would close like that, or it would open like that. But this valve is the brain for the gut. And when you get something you're touching the tongue with, it automatically starts reacting. Now you get acid reflux from it. People complain of like tension, or when they're breathing, there's issues and they feel the acid reflux go up. But a lot of times you're eating a food that this valve will close. As a reaction, it starts backing up that system all the way up. So we start to feel it coming into our throat and like our heartburn and all that stuff. Yeah. Acid GERD, all that stuff reacts from food sensitivities. But neurologic wise, this valve is, well, every organ in our body is related to a different muscle. So phylogenetically, when we're forming, they have that relationship. And this valve is related to the iliopsoas, the hip flexors. So when I'm looking on an exam and they have weak hip flexors, I know there's something. This is one of the potentials for the hip flexors, but every time you eat a food you're sensitive to, always hip flexors. So iliopsoas is the muscle type. That's how I look for it, because I test out the hip flexors. And then both of those are weak, and then go into the valvinous tender, which is located an inch to the right and about an inch and a half down, only on the right side. If you go in and that's tender in there, you're right on top of the valve. Now the valve is a smooth muscle, so it too will bind. And if you go in and push on any muscle type that has blood in it, it'll start to relax. So you can reset your valve and start this chain of event to get the mesenteric system going or getting the gut flow going just by resetting that valve. And immediately you'll regain the strength in your hip flexors. So if you eat something, you get back pain. If it builds up gas enough, it will convert into, the gas sits at the top of the rib cage, right under the diaphragm. So the colon's here, diaphragm's over that, and the gas will rise because it'll back up and it'll sit under our right rib or under our left rib, or both. But so this is called splenic flexure syndrome, just named after this area and all the surrounding tissue. But the gas will rise, hot air rises, so it sits under the ribs and it distends our ribs. You get back pain, rib pain, and it's very tender and sensitive. Besides this ileocecal valve turning off your hip flexors, which also give you back instabilities. So in an exam, I reset the valve, and then it can push the gas out from underneath the ribs. And usually as the chiropractic part I do, I adjust the rib then. Because if you can't get the gas out, it's very hard to push against the rib because that gas is pushing back underneath the ribs. So I'm trying to move something and it's just pushing back. It's very restrictive, hurts. So I reset the valve and push the gas out. And then you can move the ribs and it goes back to normal. The long term on this is to identify which foods are creating the sensitivity. And you can just take anything out of the kitchen, put it on the tongue for that recurrent nerve, and your legs will go weak if you're sensitive to it. They can test that immediately. You can go through a bunch of kitchen stuff. Instead of like blood draws, which are good, there's food sensitivities. You can do a bunch of vials of blood, send it to companies that give you, some are good, some are not as good, but there's some excellent companies out east, and they'll give you a whole platform, like 100 different food sensitivities. But in the real time, you can bring in whatever food it is that you think it is. And we'll put little parts of it on the tongue and then watch if your legs react. So if you do, let's say it's grapes, you put grapes on your tongue, your legs go weak. You take the grape off your tongue, and you go back to normal, strong. So it's a really easy way, because all of the body is related to each other in different muscles. But we can do food sensitivity testing. Here I call it the picnic. So you just bring a bunch of little food and plop them on the tongue, and we see what goes weak. And most of the time in sensitivities, because it's not an autoimmune reaction, if you just break it out of your diet for a couple of weeks, you can start to reintroduce it. But not like what we hear that they're totally wiping out elimination diets, and then you're just barely starting any food type back. This one, you just identify what it is and then bring that back later. But that's the synopsis on food sensitivities.
Complicated.
Yeah. But you can, pushing on a valve and getting the system going again. It's really easy. I had patients in the past, I remember one had a tremendous grape sensitivity. So she would eat grapes and then come in. She was bloated and tremendous pain and couldn't sleep. She loved grapes. So she would hit her grapes and then come in, and I'd reset it and move all the gas out from underneath and get it back. But that's how she dealt with her grapes.
Kind of interesting. Yeah. Those reactions.
Yeah, they're not too bad. They're really, most of the time we're looking at this reaction. We're just sensitive. We can't digest it well. And there's a whole bunch of, from the bad breath to the pain to the bloating to dizziness, whatever toxins you're holding, because this system isn't moving now. If it blocks up and that closes, it is a very slow system. It's not reacting.
Now, how would you go ahead and fix the ileocecal valve?
Oh, I go into that spot and just press, light pressure. I would recommend once a day at least.
So something that someone can actually do at home then as well.
Yeah, okay. That's the best. It's a self-treatment, guys.
That's excellent.
But you can identify because you're eating and you're starting to clear your throat. It shouldn't be at the same time. Did you eat something?
Whatever that was, right?
Yeah. But I want to show that in relation to what Dr. Levi is going to go over on how it's now an autoimmune thing, which is way different than what just hard to process stuff is.
Yes. Well, the world of allergies is fairly vast. I had the good fortune of studying on probably one of the most knowledgeable individuals out there. He's passed away in 2004, a guy by the name of Dr. William Philpott. And Dr. Philpott was an orthomolecular neuropsychiatrist. So he had a background in neurology, and of course he was involved in psychiatry. And he was probably the first, along with a couple other physicians up in Canada, who were also medical doctors and psychiatrists, that began to see that there must be something here related to how people's behaviors were influenced by what they were eating, right? And so that developed the Orthomolecular Academy of Psychiatry, which is still out there to this day. And they were primarily looking at IgE reactions. Classically, medical doctors will say, well, allergies, and that's normally what they completely only look at. Allergies are related to one category of antibodies. In order to produce an antibody, you have to have what are known as immunoglobulins. And those immunoglobulins, you see the word immune, globulin, of course, related to a certain protein that's in the bloodstream. When your body is basically trying to defend itself, you will produce immunoglobulins in mass inside of something known as a plasma cell. So that's like a factory. And then that plasma cell will say, well, I need lots of IgE immunoglobulins because there might be exposures to something that you could be reactive to in a broad sense. And the end result is that plasma cell breaks open, and then it goes after and starts looking for that culprit, that antigen, something that you consume, breathe in, or whatever the case is. And I've heard some absolutely amazing, bizarre stories. Just real briefly, when I first met Dr. Philpott, some of his colleagues, Dr. Richard Kunin, who's up north, they were reporting by starting out this lecture at a medical conference of a woman who was reactive to something that she made for friends of hers. In fact, she lived here in Long Beach. I met her later, several years later, because they told me who she was. And she said, oh, I want to meet Dr. Levi. She was, as Dr. Philpott says it, the nice young woman, 30 years old, was preparing a meal for friends that were coming over, and she was preparing her favorite for them, and it was sweet potatoes. She, country. Of course, that got me because my mom was from Tennessee. I go, oh yeah, candy sweet potatoes. She sampled the sweet potatoes before the company arrived. When the company arrived, she was on the front porch, stripped naked, seeing she was the Virgin Mary.
Well, that's not appropriate.
Yeah. So, again, we're looking at extremes in terms of what can happen to certain people's brains when there's an inflammatory attack on the brain because of an allergy. Henceforth, the book he wrote back in 1981, which was called Brain Allergies. And then what naturally he did is he fasted her for a couple of days, water and just things that would normally not be reactive for people who are sensitive or, in this case, allergic. And she was perfectly normal, to use his name, use his terminology. Very nice person. When I fed her sweet potatoes, nothing happened. And these, in the world of what is known as environmental medicine or clinical ecology, they many times will take a small extract and put it on the tongue, and you get that sort of arrangement. And so if you have this allergic type of brain, if you say the target of the body where things swell up is the brain. So nothing happened when he fed her sweet potatoes. When he fed her cinnamon, guess what happened? She went through the whole thing, became delusional. Out of the bed she walked, and down the hall she went inside the psychiatric ward. As my mom would say, naked as a jaybird. People know Tennessean language. My mom was from Appalachia. I got all those interesting sayings from the South when I grew up. There's a ton of them in my head. So it just gives you an idea how these parts of the body can create an attack so vicious that the person's not even aware. It's almost as though they're in a hypnotic trance, right? So the targets can be selective depending upon where your genetic predisposition may be. So when they test things, for example, when my daughter was young, she had the sensitivities towards grasses. So she'd be out on the grass, they have the rolling hills in some of the parks, right? And the kids start going up and down the hills. Next thing you know, here she comes and presents with allergic wheals on her legs. And so at the time, I had been doing some things with antimicrobial technology, right? The sanitizer. So I'd have to wipe the sanitizer, which reduces that reaction and ameliorates the swelling. But that can be a simple thing, or it's trees, or it's grass. Or, again, it might be a food, or maybe other chemicals. So to sort of make the dividing principle between, say, a reaction or a sensitivity versus an allergy, to the patient, it's sort of like saying, can you get rid of or help me be able to ameliorate or calm down this sort of sensitivity? So in orthomolecular nutrition, or now is known as functional nutrition, we approach this by many times saying, okay, what kind of patient do we have? Are they willing to do singular kinds of things related to food? A lot of people don't. So yes, we have them tested. We'll do a food allergy or a reactive chemistry panel because we're looking for anything and everything that happens to aggravate or create a stimulus reaction with an immunoglobulin that produces an antibody. So you'll hear in testing these words sort of thrown around loosely, where we're going to test your sensitivities, we're going to test your allergies. And for the patient, they're saying, I just want to know, where are the reactions? Where are the landmines that I'm stepping on that are causing that big boom or even a little booms collectively? So we test them, we ask questions, we try to figure out what's going on, because based upon your genetic propensity or disposition, you can have a reaction almost anywhere in the body. Some people, for example, I'm thinking of our Ukrainian lady, you know who that is, right? She presented, without mentioning her name for obviously keeping things anonymous, she was a 37-year diabetic type 1. And of course, typically in medicine, they'll tell you there's nothing you really do with that, right? So I said, well, what are the patterns in terms of first thing in the morning? What is your blood sugar? And she says it's in the mid 230s, 250s, 270s. And she was a mid-level till December. She was a mid-level manager working at Kaiser Permanente. So she had access to doctors everywhere, right? And I said, well, here's what I want you to do. And this was about 10 years ago. And I said, I want you to get your foods tested. Made it simple for her, right? I said, get your foods tested. We're going to look at, there's 5 immunoglobulins. So we're going to look at IgA, we're going to IgG, and we're going to look at IgE, right? And she said, okay, well, what is that going to do? Once we find that out, we would have you reduce or try to avoid those foods, particularly for her, because she has an extremely sensitive chemistry, which can cause her blood sugars to blast up 150, 200 so quickly, and then wake up the next morning fasted and still be above 200. So in her Ukrainian Russian way, right? Because her husband will say things like, you go, do my wife, and they'll say, she comes in after 4 weeks and she looks at me, she goes, Michael, I am so happy. And then I get the characteristic Ukrainian or Russian kiss on both sides of the face, if you've seen movies, right?
Italian.
Yeah. And my blood sugars are now consistently, if I behave, in the low 100s and upper 90s, which of course is impossible. But it just goes to show you, like with what Dr. Brock was talking about and what I'm addressing, is that if you eat something that you're reactive to, not that you're going to run around without your clothes on, but on the other side, you can be so inflamed that you spend some 37 years beyond the age of 16 and 17, where most diabetics tend to develop that problem when it becomes diabetic type 1, which is harder to manage, and suffering from it with all the inflammatory problems and everything else that goes with it. It can be reversed and challenged, and then change your pH. The swelling goes down, the joints are not as sore, the thinking gets better, because everything in the body gets the benefit when your SWAT team, your immune system, is not running around openly causing absolute havoc and just shooting everything in sight after a while, which can develop into the autoimmune problem. I was talking to a doctor of psychology today who's going to Columbia part-time, and she had heard about me from another psychologist, interesting enough, and she has fibromyalgia. And so again, see where her problem is? It's all the muscular joint sorts of things that Dr. Brock runs into quite frequently. Let's find out what's going on and what's missing in your nutritional state, and then add that molecule in. And for her, I would definitely find out what's going on. Unfortunately, I can't get her to you because she's going back to Columbia and also working through NYU, getting this master's degree in business administration.
Someday.
Yeah, someday, right? And so that becomes her target site. So wherever your problem is, or you may have small little targets. It's my stomach, Dr. Levi. I get palpitations in my heart. I don't know what's causing that. The doctor, my MDs are thinking we don't know what's causing it.
Iatrogenic. Everything is unknown.
Iatrogenic, right? We don't know the cause. I'm dealing right now, one person that I've seen for over 20 years, and her family members, and now her daughter is an attorney, and and the son's back in Memphis. He's a fireman and an EMT right now. Her mother-in-law, I just talked to her after years and years and years of what she has gone through with the doctors. The doctors finally said, we don't know what the cause is. It must be iatrogenic, or it might be autoimmune or something. And this is drug after drug after drug, medication, procedure after procedure. And I said, let's take a look and see what's missing in your body. Well, how's that going to help, Dr. Levi? I said,
deficiencies.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, there's some on the natural side, on our side, prevention. They say that's all disease has a root cause of deficiencies in nutrition and diet.
That's right. It's echo. Let's try this, because Roger Williams, who was famous for discovering most of the B complex vitamins, very well known. You probably have heard this loose term that he made popular: biochemical individuality. A lot of times nutritionists and doctors and people in functional orthomolecular medicine will use that loosely. He discovered most of those B complex vitamins. He says, guess what? You need about 60 to 70 nutrients, known nutrients, every single day. If you don't, what happens is you're going to start developing limps in your metabolism. Things are going to start limping around. And then after a while, whatever is missing, that enzyme or biochemical or that pathway or that neuronic activity related to a nerve factor and the resulting brain and that whole axis that Dr. Brock sees, a lot of, there's no way of connecting it now because you're trying to hold together a car with duct tape, right? And it just doesn't happen. You're going to need nuts, bolts, and screws in order to hold the car together so it can go down the road without making a lot of noise. So that becomes, in essence, the understanding of, in a practical way, of what patients would suggest or understand what a reaction, or in this case, an allergy is. And too many times, doctors will only test IgE allergies, and then they come to and they'll say, the doctor has tested my allergies. And you're sitting,
and they're fine.
And they're fine, and yet they're still reacting, and they know that they are. And here's the bugaboo about allergies, and sometimes even sensitivities, and Dr. Brock alluded to it, is that the very thing that you love, watch how you talk about foods. What foods do you love that you eat very frequently? Those are the foods that are probably killing you. Make sense?
Yeah.
Because that creates inflammation. And you've got firestorms running all around your body based upon that.
Yeah, because when I see a lot is left brain dominant individuals. So we're creatures of habit. We eat the same food at the same time every day. It's the same cyclic thing. It doesn't matter what the food is. If you're eating, when I did a blood work on my sensitivities, it was my breakfast. It was bananas, peanut butter, and I just switched to like almond milk. So the almond milk came. It was exactly my breakfast, and eggs. Is my breakfast I had for 20 years.
Oh, yes.
Going over and over.
That's right.
And I started to react to it.
And then you get addicted to it.
Yeah.
And then you know what addiction does. I don't care what, or as Dr. Philpott and his colleagues would say, it doesn't matter if it's wheat, whatever it happens to be. If you're eating that food frequently enough, you're eventually going to get sensitive to it. And then here's the kicker. How do you get addicted to it? Your body starts to make things that look like morphine. They call them exorphins and enkephalins, which are exactly biological products that look just like addictive or compounds that doctors would give you in terms of creating an addictive reaction. Your body will produce the addiction through its own chemistry with the molecules from the food. How's
Incredible.
that? Yeah, how's that for a stab in the back, right?
Oh, we have a few questions.
Yeah,
but
sure.
This one, the question from Linda is, can sensitivities become allergies? What do you think?
There can't. Well, again, what happens is it's that snowball effect that, Rolling Stone tends to gather moss, right? So again, if you keep trying to consume that food over and over again, eventually your body tries to hand off what part of the immune system. Mary talked about 5 immunoglobulins. These guys are already doing it. Why don't we hand it off and give it to this? There's all this backup generator process saying, we blew out the main electricity. Okay, guys, start the emergency generator in the hospital, and that pumps on, and then the lights sort of come on. But if that blows out, then what? So it can pass the buck, as we call it in social interaction, passing the buck or kicking the can along. And yes, you can develop not only sensitivities, but developing allergies simply by that over chronic exposure, that habitual wear out welcome and too frequent consumption.
Yeah. So you want to vary your diet within time. Yes.
You talked about the being 5
immunoglobulins.
You're right. Julian talks about testing 3. Why do you?
Well, the others are involved. They mediate, for example, M is a factor related to one way we test for viruses because it talks about inflammation. And D is an intercessory thing that tends to move around. But the things we can test for that will give us practical information that says IgA, things related to mucus areas of your body, which is just about everything. I mean, inside this flesh, we are super wet because we're made over 70% water. So around your joints, oh, no wonder. Oh, the doctor says I have arthritis or bursitis. It's swollen in my joints, or I get pressure around my head. There's so much liquid inside your brain and everything else to make sure that there's a river there to transport things. So the IgA, the mucous membranes in your gut are IgA, so it's a big deal. IgG can come along in terms of since you were a little kid, probably in utero or when you were just a tiny baby, you might have something fixed in your body that says you can't tolerate, for example, crustacean food. So things like oysters, and the genetic factor may be, say, Afro-Americans and certain areas of the Hispanic population, they don't do well with things such as lobster, crab, clam, and shrimp. Now, being that I've got all kinds, I'm the Hind 57 man as far as my genetic stream all over the world, literally. Amazingly. Yeah, I can tolerate shrimp and lobster, but crab and clam cause blood glucose problems for me. To the point that 20 minutes after eating it, this is one way to tell if you have a reaction or sensitivity or allergy. Do you feel sleepy after you ate that meal within about 15 to 20 minutes? Because your body says, got a war going on here. SWAT team's out. Got to use that energy. So guess what? We don't need you to be doing much. You should actually just close your eyes, Gabe, and just rest. And yes, honey. That's yep. Yeah. Oh, that was good food. I'm telling you, I love. In fact, I have my favorite in it. See the problem? And I'm getting sleepy from my favorite food. I don't feel well. I thought food was supposed to give me energy. Did I fall asleep on you? See the problem? There's the contradiction.
You should be able to have a diet where you don't get tired.
Yeah, that's right.
It shouldn't exhaust you.
That's right. Because if it does, watch out, because that's messing around with your pancreas and all the pH factors. And, we have enough problems with blood sugar difficulties in our country, don't we? Yeah.
So we have another question.
Sure.
The question is, my nose gets stuffy in the middle of the night after I eat cheese. The cheese thing. Is this a sensitivity?
Yeah. That's a common one.
It's extremely common. It is.
The dairy thing I had to give up a number of years ago, and you see that on the market too, because all of a sudden you just don't have milk that's made from cows. You say it gets a little confusing. There's soy, which I don't recommend really, but there's there's rice milk, there's oat milk, there's almond milk, there's all kinds of other alternatives, right? And they came about because people happen to have either a sensitivity or they possibly have an allergy. Now, obviously, if it's an allergy, you might find yourself, in this case, this could be an allergy because it's really attacking the area of the sinuses and all these mucous membranes, but it could also be that IgA area, mucous membranes, right? So you might be getting an IgE and an IgA, but obviously your body's giving you a signal that says, if you continue to eat that and you're getting this kind of reaction, there's a good chance that your immune system's going to rewire and damage that area where the attack's taking place. And you don't want that. All of a sudden, like, you know what? I think we have to go take those adenoids out.
Yeah, exactly. That's your warning lights.
Yeah, that's
you need
right.
those things.
Beep, beep, beep. Red and yellow lights. You need to slow the car down as opposed to, don't worry, Gabe, we're fine. Just step on the gas. Right? No. Tap the brakes.
I wanted to go into a little, because my conception of leaky gut is that eventually the more reactive toxic food, it's destroying the gut layers. The good thing is in like 3-4 days, we completely repair the gut. Very fast. Actually, it's the fastest rejuvenating tissue we have in the body is our gut lining.
Yep.
So, I mean, you can rip up the gut and it will rebuild within like 2-3 days. Yeah. Very, very fast.
Yes, that's the wonderful one. Good turnover. We've always do that. How many people have bit the inside of their tongue or the side of their mouth when they've eaten, right? Oh yeah, I know. There's always a weird tooth or something back here that is real close, and you think, gosh, isn't it amazing that the face sort of expands to keep my face away from my teeth, so I don't bite it more often, right? But in the same way, it heals up pretty fast. 2-3 days later, what was this huge swelling going, man, that is really sore where I bit the side of my jaw. Or when you see someone doing it in a restaurant and they go, oh yeah, it's interesting, Jan. Oh my gosh, the look, right? Yeah. Someone's bit their tongue or the inside. So as a result of that, it shows you how quickly all this slippery tissue that exists in the nose, inside the throat, the mouth, the digestive tract, this
all
whole
pink.
alimentary canal, it sheds pretty quickly. I mean, you shed millions and millions of cells because the body says, got to keep that area fixed up because that's the only way that food particles and nutrients get into the bloodstream. So, we've got to stay on this. And many times for that reason, I'll have people who have a very sensitive digestive tract. There's certain herbs like slippery elm and marshmallow, and just for ameliorating the fire, as it were. I have to put them on digestive enzymes, maybe that don't contain HCl, but just digestive enzyme. And I'll put them on things like vitamin A and vitamin C to help to build that lining faster. Because wherever there's a weak spot, you know what always shows up? Microorganisms. Ooh. Especially things like fungus and, certain bacteria, which are native. They're always there, but they get a lot more vicious. Or a friend of mine uses the analogy, says, you know what? When the maitre d' turns his head, or the guy who's the bouncer at the front door, watch how many thugs go into the club. Mobsters and all. What are these guys doing here? Oh, that's when I took that little break, when there was that impact. See? Yeah, so be aware of that.
Because our entire digestive system isn't really part of our body. I mean, you look at small and large intestine, the esophagus, right? The esophagus, stomach, small intestine, large intestine. This is within our bodies, but not part of our bodies. Yeah. That's the interesting thing. It's not connected. It's an outside that's inside of us. And the only way we can eat something to actually become part of our bodies is through that transport system.
Yeah.
I mean, you do more water and retention in foods in the small intestine, large intestines. They each have different purposes, but they all transport into our inside bodies.
That's right.
So whatever we eat is transporting, it has to cross cell membranes.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that is a complete outside system. It's not even part of our system.
But that's the fuel injector system right there.
Heard the theory of leaky cheesecloth.
Oh yeah,
the leaky gut.
Yes.
Because this transport system is like a cheesecloth.
Yeah.
And when you pour like a bunch of milk or something, then it won't drain straight. It'll, as it goes, it like leaks a little bit into this.
Yeah, it does.
And that's how it transports in, or basically out. So we're eating it and it's leaking out to the rest of our body. But as we eat things like oats and barley and wheats and things that are like really damaging for our gut, it tears holes in this cheesecloth. So the more holes you have in this cheesecloth, the less regulatory, bigger, larger molecules pass in.
And then the tricky part is that the DNA of your body, your internal inherent intelligence, says, I only accept vitamins and minerals, nutrients, amino acids, broken down or fatty acids from fats, right? And carbohydrates that come in the form of glucose. So if there's a failure of that carbohydrate not breaking down because you have the lack of enzymes, or you have a leaky gut, which will cause partially digested fat, proteins, or carbohydrates to go through, guess what happens to your immune system going on? It says, you know what? You're not supposed to be in here. You haven't been processed correctly. You're too big. And by itself, it'll attack that molecule. And then the memory system, the sophistication, incredible, of your immune system through your thymus behind your breastbone, it makes a note of that and puts it in the file saying, where did that oversized molecule come from? Oh, it was beef. It was corn. It was wheat. It was potatoes. Well, you know what? We can't let that in here anymore. Anytime you see it, attack it. No questions asked. So that's why a lot of times when I see people, yeah, that's right. I have to put them on digestive enzymes, particularly if they're over the age of 35 or 40, to make sure that food gets broken down better, so I can soothe the immune system to say, guess what? We have a system in here and you don't have to worry where it came from, but we're breaking foods down a lot better. And then all of a sudden that lining that Dr. Brock is talking about says, we can calm that down because we're not getting attacks on either side. Because after a while, your immune system says, I sense a partially digested food getting through that sieve, and I'm going to attack the lining of the digestive tract before it even gets through. Look how efficient I am. Aren't you, brain, aren't you proud of me? Of course, you feel all kinds of pain, and I don't need to tell you when people go,
not too proud.
Yeah, I've got gastritis, I've got ileitis, I've got gluten sensitive enteropathy. The doctor says I've got irritable bowel syndrome. They're going to do a lower GI, and they're saying, well, I might have colitis or some other ulcerative something, because now you've got this unbelievable, as you can see, counter strain going on between the inside of the immune system and the walls of the intestines not going out. You're not digesting the food. It's like, holy moly, this is crazy. So that's where we have to go through and put the nutrients in, sometimes withdraw certain foods to stop this explosion of you stepping on landmines and blowing up your body literally, which can lead to an autoimmune reaction when your body says, I'm going to attack everything now. I give up.
Yeah, the autoimmunity.
Yeah.
And this is horrible.
Oh, that's horrible.
Man, I mean, that gets to where they're not eating anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know what food eating.
That's right.
A question.
Mops.
Allergies come from how modified it has been.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
The chemical or potassium.
Yeah,
mops.
So I'll repeat. And the sensitivities come from how modified GMO our food are, or what pesticides are in our food. Absolutely. Actually,
there.
We don't have the same food as we did in the 70s or even them from compared to the 40s.
That's right.
It is. It's not nutrient rich soil anymore, and it's completely messed with.
And that's why I tell people, they say, Dr. Levi, do I really have to take vitamins? Well, let's see. Foods are prematurely picked, so it's sort of like we're eating preemie foods, if you will, to use the analogy.
It's true.
It's like this was 6 weeks before it might have been mature on the vine ripen. Usually, if you have a chance to go, here's a vine ripened orange and one that's purchased inside the store, and you say, my gosh, it's a huge difference. So to answer your question, yes, unfortunately, you have to, in order to counteract the other things that are in there that weren't here 100 years ago, sprays and this and excipients and binders and things that are in the food, to calm that down and to save your body from getting big hits or a possible reaction to a chemical or a pesticide, herbicide, that's where you have to take nutrients so that you don't run out of literally electrons. And that's really what an antioxidant is. It's an electron donor. It'd be like if I was walking along the street and all of a sudden Jan's reaching in her pocket going, I don't have my wallet. That's okay. You know what? Here, have a $20 bill. That's what an antioxidant does. And you go, gee, thanks, like those old commercials in black and white, right? So it's just giving out electrons. It's giving out free money if it's coming into the account through your mouth, right? And so that you're there. So if there's a hit or if there's a need or a reaction, it helps to buffer that by making sure you've got plenty of electrons to stabilize the pH of your body, which helps enzymes, hormones, and digestion and all kinds of other things. It's all about electricity in our bodies.
Oh, it really is. I second that. But the stomach is really just a hydrochloric acid producer. And as we age, we just don't do as well as we did when we were younger. So this old stomach doesn't make as much hydrochloric acid.
Yeah.
So that's why you have to take enzymes of hydrochloric acid to actually raise it.
Yeah, because that was that old thing when, especially with guys, we've all heard this from our parents, particularly by our moms, that say, that boy eats so much, he eats me out of house and home. There's that terminology you're saying. Or it's called what's the other one? That kid, he's got a garbage disposal for a stomach, or he's got a cast iron stomach.
Yep.
Then suddenly 35 years later, those same foods that you used to eat, in abundance, oh man, I can eat that whole pizza. Why? Oh man, I'm a stud. What? All of a sudden you're thinking, you know what? I feel uncomfortable and kind of queasy and upset stomach because you don't produce enough of these enzymes like you used to when that old system was brand new.
Yeah, that's the thing with alkaline water and buffers and what's it called? Antacids.
Antacids. Be careful with carbonated
They're
beverages.
opposite of what the stomach actually does.
Yeah,
that lowers your acid.
Yeah, we invented carbonate. Right, we invented carbonated beverages. It never existed before, 100 years ago or so. There you go.
I sometimes get acid reflux when I eat. I think it's when I eat too late. And then
What is that?
right away.
Yes.
Is that just because I haven't
Well, remember, as your body goes on, the day goes on, your body's going, guess what? The sun is going down, and there's a whole thing, the circadian rhythms, and everything starts slowing down. And then, of course, when you're laying in bed in that position, your body says, you know what? The digestive tract wants to sleep too, right? And if that's when you want to say, if I eat too late at night, particularly if you're beyond 40 years old, it's not a bad idea to start taking some digestive enzymes when you eat, particularly at night, or when you have fat and protein combinations. So, chicken, fish, pork, that sort of thing. Take a protein digesting enzyme, a complete comprehensive pancreatin, biles in it, HCl, because that way you have a better opportunity of making your body feel like, man, this feels like when I was 20 years old, eating all that food and no problems now.
I just have to stop eating before 7.
That's better, because your body says, first of all, I want to shut everything down because everybody wants to go to sleep and refurbish. And when you take in that food too late at night and you don't have digestive support, it's like walking around saying, I'll read the paper today, but you know what? I can't find my glasses. Dead in the water, right? It just happens right here. Yeah.
So we have a good question in the chat. So where does a person who is diagnosed with autoimmune disease begin in order to get better? Where's the beginning for them?
First of all, let's get some comprehensive blood work on you. I think Jan knows about this. Esther go, we need this. So we go through and we want to look at your hormones. We want to look at your thyroid. We want to look at typical things. Make sure you're not anemic. Find out, even in conversation, do you have foods that you eat in abundance? What foods do you love? And then people go, oh, let me tell you. And they're so proud to tell you. You go through that and suddenly you think, well, in the classical allergy patterns of understanding, you tell them, well, why don't you eat less of this and less of that, because you're eating a lot of milk products. You're having a lot of bread. You're having, and sometimes it's coffee. It could be chocolate. But I love chocolate. I can't do without my chocolate, Dr. Lee. I go, well, I think your body's immune system would like you better if you did that, right? A lot of people say, I'm not going to do anything. Let's just do the test. So we do a test, and we also look at the nutrients that are probably missing as well. And we fill up those gaps, get the links in the fence to attach. So when the person grabs onto the fence, and, we were kids in Los Angeles growing up near the Coliseum, if we wanted to play basketball, you climb the fence and throw your ball over, right? So imagine the fence had links that are missing. And halfway up, all of a sudden you slip and you go, I'm falling. That feeling and there you go down on the ground, at up 10 feet when you used to cross over. It's the same thing in the body. The body starts doing, I'm falling. So we would do the blood test. We would look at it and do a comprehensive intake to see what's going on. What are you reacting to? What parts of your body are showing pain? How about in your familial history in your family? Who else has osteoarthritis or that gastric problem or irritable bowel or some kind of other gland or tissue problem? So we calm the fire as much as we possibly can and fill the gaps. That would be the first thing we want to do.
What specific test would you start with? The first baseline?
I would want to see some comprehensive blood chemistry. And then that way, when you can explain to them so that they can see, well, okay, you've got a low thyroid. You've got adrenal glands that aren't working right. Your digestive tract doesn't seem that well. So let's support those areas. I think you're deficient in minerals. I think we should do things related to, and you find this frequently in our society where we're not moving around as much and we're not an agra type of society. People are drinking far too little water. They're not getting fluids in, and so they're dehydrated. And the body doesn't like that because you can't do much of anything except for that.
I have a lot in my coffee.
So there's
She came from the back room to punch me with that one.
Boom, right? So your body weight basically divided by 2 and turn that into ounces of water gives you an idea.
That's a formula.
Yeah, I got that from Dr. Leroy Perry, who used to be the head of the International Sports Medicine Academy. Yeah, DC guy. Yeah, chiropractic. You had a question?
You just answered it.
Oh, I did? Okay, right. So if you're doing work, because one of the things I do, I'm also a neuromuscular therapist. So every time I go in there to do work here in the office, I make sure to take in a couple of glasses of water. Because again, it's too easy using your muscles, which are made up of water primarily, to get dehydrated. And you don't know it only because you get lulled into the fact that says, I don't really feel that thirsty, but your body says, don't wait until your mouth is going, desert dry, put water in before and just.
Well, I heard a ratio once. If you're 10% dehydrated, your muscle strength, if like you're an athlete, you're at 50%.
Yeah,
if you're a little bit dehydrated, you're absolutely
exactly
totally different. Like
it was one of those, what eye-opened for me when I took my first chemistry class back in college, when I realized the difference between glucose in the bloodstream and stored glucose, which is in the muscles, right? Or in the liver, glycogen. One water molecule, H2O, that's the difference. So if you add H2O to glycogen that's in storage so that you can raise blood sugar, it goes in the back in the bloodstream, keep our blood sugar balanced. If you do that, it turns into glucose. How's that for it?
That's all it takes.
Yeah, that's all it takes. Yeah.
Because when you're working out, your blood serum sugar, let's say an apple, you're immediately burning that. So that's within the first 10 minutes. Easy. So when you're exercising, first 10 minutes is the blood sugar. Second 10 to 15 minutes is the glycogen storage. That's the second energy product for us. Glycogen. So glycogen. But that's what you're doing. It's stored in the liver and stored in the muscles. But you get 10 minutes off the food you just ate, 10 minutes off glycogen storage, and then what's the next source for energy?
Yeah, you get in there, your body says, I think I'm going to grab some fat molecules,
but usually muscle.
Muscle goes too,
Muscle converts in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
Immediately. So once you burn up your sugar, your glycogen, it just takes your muscles.
Bam. And that's why, for example, after a hard workout, you want to put those protein molecules back into your body. So probably a protein-rich beverage or, a meal that has a good soluble levels of protein that you can hopefully digest well, right? So you can get it through the bloodstream and the whole thing with the membrane, the brush border membrane. And so it gets in the bloodstream to replenish what you used.
But those starving, like they eat lunch, they skip dinner, they wake up in the morning.
That's right.
And then they just start hammering like the treadmill in the gym. And so they have nothing from the last meal was lunch the next time. It takes 5 hours from the time they're hitting that treadmill to burn that fat. But what they're missing is once they burned up, they didn't eat any food. And then you really don't have any glycogen storage because you hadn't eaten from the night before, the afternoon before. So it's all coming from muscles.
Yeah.
Because it takes 5 hours to get to that fat, and they're not reaching it on a treadmill in 5 hours. So it's all they do is they break down their muscles for energy then.
Yeah.
And then at night when they sleep, that afternoon, the meal after they work out and use all their muscles for their energy to pump on the treadmill, then they'll start replenishing some of the muscle tone. But then it's an endless cycle. That's why they're not getting their gains. They're not losing their fat and they're just staying the same.
Yeah.
This cycle is ignored. It's the timing mainly of what you eat and how you drink it and stuff. Like in the office here, we're going to get hydrogenated water, which is amazing from the Echo Water company.
Okay.
Amazing. Yes. So it's better when you have that hydrogen. It actually helps to do the stomach acidity, and it gets into transport systems a lot better with binding those free electrons.
Yeah, that's right.
That's what that does.
Yeah.
So it's amazing when you get into workouts and just there's so many studies on hydrogenated water. So it's the timing of what you eat and what type of water it is. Junk those alkaline waters. I'm not a fan of those things.
Yeah, that's right.
Because it wrecks your stomach before it even gets there.
It's tricky with, and here's the caveat with alkaline acid-base balance or alkaline waters. And I had this debate with a guy who used to actually work in the NASA rocket ship industry, right? And he said, when you look at the whole process of drinking an alkaline fluid, your stomach, of course, quickly changes that, or it's going to be working to change it into something that's going to be balanced, that's going to be compatible with your body at roughly approximately just a little bit less than the midline of 7. The pH might go down to about 6.5. but it's going to take work to do that. So
Mm-hmm.
you've got a problem with that. And so it's just so much better to supply something like hydrogen in the system, because that gobbles up free radicals, stabilizes the pH of your body. And true, again, why do we have to drink water? Because it has hydrogen and oxygen in it. And that tells you right there, well, why the importance of that? Because everything in the universe is made up of hydrogen. And you're no exception to that. You're part of that whole circle, if you will.
So some of the things, like we were talking about IgE factors and IgG and IgA. Well, like one of the products I take is colostrum, because it's loaded with that. That's the stuff before the breast milk comes out. All the sticky, gooey stuff is loaded. So in nature, that sets our bodies up, animal or person, for an immune system developed, in that the first thing they come out, right to IgE factors.
That's the
colostrum.
That's sort of like an injection charge into living out here in this world.
Sets your gut function for life.
Yep. That's
so
right.
if you're not a breastfeeding mom and you go to the bottle and you have like all that fake, what's it, like the fake baby's milk and all
that's right. Yeah, you're doing with that, huh?
You're
Similac
missing
and the other ones,
these, you don't have colostrum, which is completely natural, and every animal on Earth produces it for the young to set up their guts for the rest of their life.
That's right.
So there's issues.
Yeah.
There's issues if you're a bottle-fed kid and you don't get this stuff right away.
Yeah, unfortunately,
but you can buy the supplements.
You can get it. Yeah, the supplements are available. So it's always a good thing to find that means to be able to make sure you get that.
Yeah, there's a lot of companies that produce colostrum. One of my favorites is Immune Tree, because I read the research that the doctor had he got his PhD from Harvard, and Kleinfelter is his name, and he owns that company, Immune Tree. But his studies compared to, he didn't do it. They were third-party studies. Compared to other colostrums, his was more active and had better returns. But they're all good.
Yes, and so again, what can we do to make sure to shore up the immune system so it stays off of our backs, if you will, so we're not stepping on landmines, to create a means by which the body can use the immune system not to attack us, but actually initiate healing, because that's what it does. It's supposed to say on a daily basis, anytime there's an injury, it doesn't matter where it is, your immune system cells are there immediately to repair it. So the less fires that you start striking matches, the less tendency you're going to have your immune system attacking you. So make sure you've got electron donors around that are doing this. Make sure that your hormones are in relatively good balance, filling up those gaps, so that the intelligence of the body through the DNA can direct the traffic. That's what's critical. Make sure you got the links attaching in the system so that you don't have a fence that you're climbing and suddenly you find yourself falling off of it because there's a break in the linkage.
Yeah, but colostrum acts as like an immune regulator. So if you have a hypersensitive, let's say I have MS, multiple sclerosis, and I'm attacking my own myelin sheath. So the fatty covering in your nerves and brain, it will regulate it down. But it's auto-regulating. If you don't have enough immune system, it actually increases it up. That's the magic thing about colostrum. If you're too high or too low, it regulates it to a normal middle. And actually on these bottles, I've read that they made them take them off, but it was one of the last bottles to say it cures cancer.
Oh yeah.
Because cancer is a deficiency in your immune system.
Yeah. That's
and you're not fighting. We all have nicks in our DNA on a daily basis that our immune system will correct.
Constantly.
But if we're too loaded, the immune system's too low, we're going to start growing things that we cannot fight off. And that's the problem.
That's right.
And very alkaline, acidic, sugary areas of our body.
Or inflammation, as it's called collectively. Yeah, that's what it is. So,
question?
With adding trace minerals?
Yeah, I've been doing, for the last couple of years now, there's a company called Trace Mineral Research, and they're out of Utah. And I've been taking that. I add that into my water now. In fact, I
did that this morning.
There's a little bottle inside the cabinet in the room here. And I just added it in. You can buy it over the counter at all your health food stores, Trace Mineral Research, and it's their trace mineral water. Comes in a nice little blue bottle. Some of those things are are excellent. I mean, you need small amounts of certain trace minerals, but again, they're left out of the diet because of premature picking and what goes on the environment. And so putting them back in is a good thing.
And you would add it every day?
I add every day into water. Yeah, when you drink it. Yeah, just a few drops, for every glass, or do it in the morning. If you fill up a water bottle, put in about 7 to 10 drops of water. I mean, into a large water bottle.
Yeah, I made my hydrogen water in the Dr. Paul Leotero's little, what's it called? It's an 8-ounce bottle that it makes, but it's called Echo Water.
It's like a generator.
So I poured my water in there. I hit it. It made hydrogen. I put it in a cup, and I added my my trace minerals.
Yep. There you go.
And that's how I start. Like,
what's like a good, at least time frame, generally 12, 16, 20 hours of fasting, just to kind of focus or flush out our system?
No,
Like once a week, what's a good?
I would say most people can do fasting, or they'll do a modified fast, for example, where they will eat lighter on 1 or 2 days when obviously their bodies are not doing a lot of work, because you don't want to strain yourself. And then being cognizant of being able to keep the fluid content up in your system, particularly with water. There's a number of people that I work with. They're not capable of doing that because they've got a lot of long-term disorders that are going on in their system. But as the body gets healthier, you can do something, even if it happens to be for 8 or 12 hours, and then gradually introducing foods within that day, that 1-day fast. Yeah, so you have to find out. Again, that's why we need the blood chemistry to see where are we, so we can have that marker there to say, are you healthy enough to do that, or are you so deficient that all you're doing is just robbing yourself because there's not enough products in the storehouse?
Yeah, you do have to be someone healthy.
Yeah.
A lot of people are sick and they go to fasting and they don't have enough nutrients or energy to support it. It actually hurts them. So we're almost done, but I wanted to. Oh, Mr. Roscoe, do you have anything to offer? Well, we could wrap it up. Kevin?
Okay.
Getting the word. Well, thanks for viewing today. The purpose of these are so that you can be your own doctor. When someone hits you pretending to know what they're talking about, which happens a lot. A lot of medicine does that when it comes to functional things that they don't know about. You can question it. You can at least get the idea in your head of, oh, no, that doesn't make sense because I learned something about how I control my life.
Yes, that's right.
Because you are your own doctor.
Yeah, and you'll know something about what's going on with your own chemistries, so that no one can tell you, well, you're just in the normal range, or your blood work looks fine, or the doctor says everything is good. That's typically what happens. So
it's generalized and erased.
That's right. So we just do things more specific to say, what does that funny word there mean, and how come I'm at the very, very low range of that particular structure?
Yeah, well, if you're low range of multiple tests and structures, then there might be something. There's a bigger picture. You have to look at all of it.
That's right. Exactly. So as a consumer, your best advocate. All right?
Well, thank you all for being here in person and online. But I want to just close. Yeah, thanks. Next week, in 2 weeks. So we're trying to do that every 2 weeks, Saturday at 6, Coffee with Doc. But
all right.
So I'm Doc Brock, Neurochiro. I won't crack you up, but I'll get on your nerves.
All right, everyone. Thanks a bunch. Appreciate it.
Thanks.